Hello and welcome to a little bit different video than you're used to seeing. With any luck, you have watched the point of view video that we put out of the 2012 Princess Half Marathon, and if that's kind of piqued your interest in running that race, this is a race overview of everything that happened, and with any luck it will answer some of the questions that you may have, some concerns, and let you know how to get the most fun out of a wonderful race. To start with, this is a Disney event, so to get the greatest amount of enjoyment, it's my suggestion that you stay on Disney property at a host hotel. Pre-race, the buses ran 20 minutes, every 20 minutes from the host hotels to the ESPN complex where the packet pickup and the expo were taking place, so getting there was a breeze. A little more difficult if you're driving your own car, but not too bad getting to the expo. If you stay off property, you're dealing with traffic. For anything Disney, staying on property makes life a whole lot easier. Once you get to the ESPN complex, for packet pickup, bibs, the Runner's Retreat band pickup, if you want to attend Runner's Retreat, we'll talk about that in a bit, and your B-tag check to make sure that your B-tag, your timing chip on the back of your bib is working, is all done in a separate tent. And then once you're done with that, you can move over to the main expo building where you pick up your shirt, your bag check bag, the clear bag, and the expo there in the main building. Shirt pickup is all the way in the back of the building, and the official merchandise is all the way in front. Very clever merchandising, but that's the way it goes at a lot of the expos. You got to walk all the way back and walk all the way back out, and when you do that, you're going to have to walk by some vendors. The expo had a lot of vendors, some great speakers and seminars, Jeff Galloway, Donna Deegan, Sage Steele from ESPNW. There was a nice course overview seminar by the race and course directors. There's a counter service dining area there, so you don't have to say, I'm hungry, I'm leaving, and want to come back. You can eat right there. We got there early, and we closed down the expo. We stayed there all day. That's how much there is to see and do there, especially if you listen to the speakers. Jeff Galloway talked for about 3 hours, so it was great. A lot of merchandise. Some problems with the limited edition merchandise, like the Dooney and Burke bags. There's no ticket required to get into the expo. You don't have to be a race participant to get into the expo, and so unfortunately some of the eBay vultures got there early and bought up a whole bunch of Dooney and Burke bags that you can now find on eBay for about double the price that you could have bought them at the expo. On race day, the nice thing about staying on Disney property is you can be half asleep and start boarding the first bus at 3 o'clock in the morning. Disney transportation helps to avoid gridlock. The roads start closing down at 11 p.m. the night before the race, so getting to the race in a private car is a royal pain in the rear. And at the end of the race, you got to get out along with everybody else too, so save yourself the hassle, stay on Disney property, take the bus. We got the first bus at 3 a.m. and it was nice, about half full, got us there in plenty of time. It was great. If you want to make sure you avoid the crowds, get up early. The buses drop you off in the Epcot parking lot, pretty close to where the regular resort drop-off is, and you have to walk all the way across the parking lot to the other side of the parking lot where the runners area is. So be prepared for a little bit of a hike. Don't worry, you won't get lost. There's a whole bunch of people there. I wish the drop-off location was a lot closer to the Runners Village. That would be just wonderful, but Disney's been doing this a long time, so there must be a reason that you're dropped off so far away. After the hike, you end up at the Runners Village. We didn't spend a lot of time there because we used Race Retreat, and we'll talk about that a little later, but the area was well lit. It had food, water, merchandise, a metal engraver, and it looked pretty spacious. Lots and lots of loud music, DJ pumping people up. Looked like people were having a lot of fun out there, and plenty of room for all of the runners. As I said, we used the Race Retreat, and this is how the other half lives. There was lots of pre-race friendly food and beverages, our own private changing areas with our own porta potties, a private bag check, character photos. What is not to like about it? In my humble opinion, it is well worth the extra money. We lounged around on beanbag chairs after we had our breakfast and waited for the time to leave, and it was just marvelous. It's all climate controlled. Don't have to worry about being out in the weather. Bag check for runners is in a huge tent. I didn't experience the general bag check, but I didn't hear any complaints from other runners about any problems with bag check. After you get to hang around for a little bit, after getting there so early in the morning, it's a 5:45 a.m. start, but before 4:30, they'll start what's called the walkout. And the walkout is the walk from the runner's village to the corral. And that walk is right at 1 mile along kind of a narrow road. So be prepared for that. Be patient. You will get there. We left the comforts of the retreat tent pretty late and still made the corrals by the national anthem. So dress appropriately. If it's going to be cold, I would suggest that you go to the Goodwill, the Salvation Army secondhand store, buy a big, furry, fluffy, pink, green, whatever, who cares what it is, robe, and throw that on, and then right before the start you can throw it off. Porta potties. Everybody loves porta potties. There were lots of porta potties. There were lots of porta potties in the runner's village, and there were plenty of them along the route of the walkout. But the first bank of them caused a huge bit of congestion. And what I think happened is I think people panicked and thought it was the last stop before the corrals, and they all decided to dive in and block the road. Disney better signage there would have helped. If they'd have had a big foam finger that said more porta potties down the road, I think that gridlock might have been taken care of. As is typical in any large race, there were women and men who chose to run out to the bush line and squat rather than use the porta potties, and I'll never understand that thinking, because if they would have just been patient, they would have seen plenty more, but to each his own. Once you end the walkout, you are at the corrals at about a mile from the start. And when you have over 17,000 runners show up for a race, you know the corrals are going to be huge. But the load into the corrals was quite smooth, especially when you take into account the number of runners. I stayed to the back of my corral, and there was plenty of room to move around. If you don't know where you're going in the sea of people, there were plenty of volunteers to ask. They were trying to check bibs as quickly as they could, but sometimes you get swept in with a group of people. If you didn't know where to go, just ask. They pointed you right to where you needed to go. At the start of the race, the corrals went off in 6-minute waves, with the wheelchairs going off first, followed by each corral. The corrals are lettered A through H, somewhere around 2,250 runners in each corral. So there's a lot of people that are starting with you. Once you're in your corral, don't worry, you won't get lost. The sea of humanity will carry you on to the place you have to be to start. At the start line looked great, as you'd expect from Disney. There was a jumbotron that was splashed with pictures of the runners as they ran by. Hello. Fireworks lit up the dark sky as each corral was given their start, which was really cool. The voice of America's marathons, Rudy Novotny, did the yeoman's work of commentary with the fairy godmother and some others lending their support. And as events go, it's hard to beat a start like that. It didn't matter if you were an elite or in the very last corral, you got fireworks for your start. It was pretty cool. Let's talk about the course. The really fantastic thing about running in Walt Disney World is that the entire race is conducted on Disney property. Not only do you get to run through the Magic Kingdom and run through Epcot, but the entire course is teeming with Disney-themed entertainment. I was worried that there was going to be long stretches of boring road running, because if you take the monorail to Epcot and back, boy, that's a big old long nothing stretch there. But there was nothing at all boring about the course. That isn't to say that there weren't any challenges, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it was not a boring course. It wasn't like going out and slogging miles in the middle of nowhere. And besides, you had a lot of people there with you. If you're worried about your time, there was a great signboard and clock at every mile mark, and it was celebrated at every mile. And when you think about Disney, you automatically think about entertainment, and this race was no exception. It was rarely more than half a mile between characters, bands, stilt walkers, all sorts of things that you could see to take your mind off of running. If you dared to brave the lines, there were ample opportunities to get your photo taken with a host of Disney characters. If you wanted to get your photo taken and it was along the stretch from Epcot to Magic Kingdom, the better strategy was to run past them, turn around, and get them on the way back. I'm one of those runners who just has to have their iPod going whenever I run. I cannot stand the sound of my own footsteps. That to me is just horribly mind-numbing. But at the behest of some people who claim they knew better, I tucked my earbuds into my shirt at the start, and surprisingly they stayed there until the finish. It was that good. It was that entertaining. I never once had to think about, oh, I need a diversion by listening to a song or something else. It was all out there on the course. Even a Disney race would be pretty dull without spectators, and there were some nice places that were provided for people to cheer and view the course. If you have family and friends that are coming to watch you, look into the cheer squad for details about their program. But it's not necessary to join the cheer program. They can just show up. The largest and most impressive group of spectators is on Main Street USA at the Magic Kingdom. Once you enter the Magic Kingdom through backstage, you come through the parade gate at the end of Main Street, and you hear them and you see them, and there are lots and lots of people just crowding Main Street. It's a grand sight. You make that turn up Main Street. Main Street's lined with cheering people. You have the castle in the background. It's just a wonderful wonderful running experience. As far as the course goes, it wasn't terribly difficult to find running room just past the starting line if you hung back in the corral. The field would open up fairly quickly as people would just go galloping off as they normally do at the start. But soon after, we hit a spot where the road narrowed, and it caused quite a bit of congestion, most of which was caused by inconsiderate acts of the other runners. And at this point, I'd like to take a time out from the race report and talk directly to you runners, and especially of those of you who walk during a race. The sides of the road are for walking. The rest of the road is for running. And don't think that that statement's coming from some elite running snob. I use the Jeff Galloway run, walk, run method. At some point of every minute of every run, I'm walking. But I do so at the side of the road, not smack dab in the middle of the running lane. I love it that you're here and giving it your all, but walk to the side, please. And also, this isn't your own personal social event. If you're running with a friend, run side by side only when there is ample room, and that means a lot of room on each side of you. When the course gets tight, take a cue from the elites, drop into single file, and draft each other. You may think that you rule the road because you're out here running, but there are people behind you that you're blocking even when you're running side by side. If you're walking side by side in a narrow stretch, may the pox be upon your head. Oh, there were many stretches where I had to dive into the grass to have any possibility of passing large groups of walkers and very slow runners who were 2, 3, and 4 abreast at times. Please, please, please be aware of what's going on around you. Now back to our regularly scheduled race report. There were some narrow sections in the course, the merge lane that I already mentioned, the turn into the TTC, the dip under the water bridge before you get to the Contemporary, the cast entrance to the Magic Kingdom, Main Street USA itself, the bridge to Tomorrowland, the run through the castle, the backstage gate at Splash Mountain, the road past the Polynesian, which is a very long, narrow stretch, the Epcot parking lot overpass, the Epcot cast entrance, the run to the Seven Seas Lagoon and back, the exit through the kennel gate of Epcot, and finally the last turn to the finish chutes. Every one of these locations caused me to slow down and maneuver around slower runners and walkers, and believe me, I'm not at all fast. Unless you're an elite runner or have an extremely early corral placement, run it for what it is and have a really, really fun time. As you can imagine, there's a lot of turns inside the Magic Kingdom and a few inside of Epcot, but there are plenty of straight sections to play with if you want to see what your feet can do. And I really enjoyed the straight open sections of the course a lot more than I thought that I was going to. A lot of people are worried about elevation changes. This is Central Florida where flat got its name, but there are some elevation changes that could be of a concern to runners who don't normally run hills. According to my Garmin elevation data, 75.5% of the course is flat, plus or minus 4 feet. That's pretty much pancake flat. There is a gentle rise starting at about the half-mile mark, another one at about the 1.5 mile mark, but then you begin a kind of a gradual descent to the dip under the water bridge, and then you got to come back up under that, and that's just past 3.5 miles. From there you begin an ascent that runs pretty close to mile 6.5, but it's so gradual you really won't even notice it's there. As you pass mile 10, there is an ascent onto the Cloverleaf interchange that sends you back toward Epcot. That is a very long loop. But if you take the inside track, that roadway has a little bit more camber to it, but it is the shortest route, and it is where the course is measured from. But be on the lookout for walkers who tend to be out in force as the road gets steeper. It kind of freaks them out that they're going uphill. Shorten up your steps, you'll be fine. And then there's another little rise at the Epcot overpass when you're going past the parking lot. But pretty much once you're past the Cloverleaf, it's all pretty easy. The total ascent is only just over 400 feet, so don't worry about nosebleeds. Short strides, keep it going. You'll be fine. Let's talk about water stops. Water stops were about at every 1.5 miles, which was originally a concern to me, but it was fine. The first one came in surprisingly right at the first mile. It was like, whoa, water already? The stops are divided into 2 groups, with the first half being Powerade and the second half being water. And there were even different colored cups to distinguish water from Powerade, which is a really, really nice touch. All the stops were on both sides of the road, which helped clear the area quickly. If you were on the left, you didn't have to dive to the right. Everything that was on one side of the road was on the other side of the road. They were all manned with volunteers who did a pretty good job of keeping stray cups off the ground. There were only a couple of water tables that had just a buildup of old cups, but they did a really good job of keeping that area clean. Also, please, these people are volunteers. When you reach up and grab your cup from them, do so gently so you don't soak them, and say, thank you. And then as you're running down the water stop, pick out every other person or so and thank them. They're out here making the race possible for you. I ran by a lot of water stops where I was the only one that thanked people that were there, and I thought that was just in bad form. These people got up as early as you did, and some of them got up earlier, so they can give you water. As to fuel, gels were provided by Cliff, so if you use any other fuel, bring it with you. I use Jawbreakers every mile for a sugar booster, and then I use Shot Blocks later on as a later stage fueling. So I pack my own supply. But if you want to make that fuel stop, you can't miss it. It was a huge orange arch that said Cliff, and people out in force handing out gels. Medical on the course, I believe, was supported by Florida hospitals, and there were a number of med tents out on the course. There were a few emergencies out on the course, and as far as I know, they were all attended to quite properly. A couple of tents were even pumping out menthol gel for your legs out past mile 8, which was a pretty good touch. And once you get through all that, you get to the finish line. Very nice finish line. Rudy Novotny providing the color commentary and moral support there. Mickey was there. Watch out for the commentator chip mat that's on the ground before the finish. That's the mat that flashes up your name to Rudy. You don't think you memorized all your names, did you? Before you get to the finish, your name pops up in the commentator's tent, so he can cheer you on as you make your finish, which is a really nice touch. Once we crossed the finish, we entered the runner recovery area. There were plenty of people handing out medals, water, Powerade. The spectator area had a lot of cheering people, which was a nice touch. And it was a short walk to the finishers' medal photography area, and then on through to pick up a post-race boxed snack. And if you checked gear, on into bag check to get your gear. And the medal was great bling, as you would expect from any Disney event. And yep, take a look. Pretty cool. Once you got through bag check, the runners' village turned into a reunion area, and it was now open to friends and family. There was a lot of loud music and celebration happening there. There were placards on the tents with letters on them in case you wanted to prearrange a meet with anyone. So say, hey, I'll meet you under the B or the R or the whatever, which made it a lot easier for people. A lot of people use cell phones. So the highlight to my finish was when I got through into almost to bag check. Was meeting my coach, Jeff Galloway, who waited around and somehow found me in the throng of finishers. And he congratulated me and wanted to talk about any issues I might have had during the race. And it was well over an hour after his finish time before I finished. And he really didn't have to stick around and do that. And all I can say is that Jeff is a great coach and a really, really classy guy. And he's the one who got me off my butt and coached me all the way to the finish line. And I can't say it enough. Thank you, Jeff. Since we had race retreat is both pre-race and post-race. And you just go back to the race retreat tent. You have a armband on, and go there and get your own bag pickup. And that's where we got our bags. But for the general runner's bag check, I didn't see any long lines. When we got back into the race retreat tent, we had a frosty towel, fresh sandals, and an adult beverage if you were so inclined. There were video feeds of the finish line on big screen TVs in there. A nice post-race breakfast was waiting for you. I love bacon after a long run, and boy, they had bacon in abundance. Plenty of your standard breakfast fare, along with a lot of drinks. We were treated royally well, and really hard to imagine what it'll be like on a normal race without having that race retreat tent. Oh, my word. Once everything was done, we needed to take return transportation back to our host hotel, and this is where a bit of a problem creeped in, and one that I'd like to see Disney address. We wanted to get the most value out of Race Retreat, so we stayed until it closed. And when it closed up, we moseyed across the runner's village that was now kind of emptying out to go get our medals engraved with our times. And the spot that we were supposed to be picked up for the return bus must have been really poorly marked because it wasn't evident at all where it was located. We started walking in the general direction that we told that it should be, but we saw no buses, so we elected to turn around and walk all the way across the parking lot to take regular guest transportation back to the hotel. Disney marked the location of the return buses much better, and how about you run them at least a half hour later? That way the people that are in Race Retreat clear to the bitter end can have a bus to go back. That would be so much more helpful. Overall impressions. Would I run a Disney event again? Let me answer that by saying that I'm already signed up to run the Disneyland Half Marathon to complete the Coast to Coast Challenge, and I have the date marked on my calendar for when registration opens for the Disney World Marathon in January. Yes, I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was a fantastic first-time half marathon event with some of the most liberal course times that you're ever going to find. 16 minutes per mile from the time the last person crosses the mat. I really didn't hear any complaints about people getting swept. It was really an easy race to run. While there's always going to be a few problems with events of this magnitude, 17,200 or 17,500, I think, were the total number of runners who showed up. I think it was 18,200 who registered. That's a lot of people to deal with. The problems were really fairly few and insignificant. One of the things that impressed me took place during the expo. And the race director and course director were giving the talk on the overview of the course, which I would recommend anybody for their first time go to and get their insights onto the course. And that way there's a lot fewer surprises. But after the seminar was over, they were hanging around, and they were asking if people had ever run the race before, or returning racers. And no, this was my first time running a Disney event, and this was my first half marathon. And both the race director and the course director asked to please give them feedback about the entire experience. And that's part of the impetus for this report. So all I have to say is, hey, you asked for it, so here it is. But it's always good that Disney or any race looks for the feedback of the participants to see how they can make it better. If you've never participated in a Run Disney event, my suggestion to you is sign up now. It's a fun race, and it's so fun. Something really weird happened, and that's you're almost too sad to cross the finish line. You think that finish line is going to look so great, and it does when you look up there and you say, yeah, I'm going to finish. But what comes over you is the overwhelming feeling of, oh no, I don't want it to end. It's a really cool event. So I would suggest that even for first-timers, and especially for first-time half marathon or marathoners, sign up for a Run Disney event. You'll love it, and you'll be treated very well. That's it for now. Next time we'll see you out there on the road, and with any luck, maybe at a Run Disney event.